Hey, what's going on? I've been chewing on this Lost Soul-Aside update like it's a chewy boss fight, and I've got a full rundown for you that goes deep on what changed, why it matters, and exactly what players will notice when they load in. The big headline is simple. The team rolled out a free, fairly huge update on November 18th that drops a new challenge mode called Surge of Voidrax, alongside a raft of combat polish, quality of life fixes, and cosmetic additions. Basically, the kind of update that's meant to pull people back into the game and smooth over a lot of the rough edges that showed up at launch. So first, let's talk about that new mode because it's the meat of the update. Surge of Voidrax is a wave-based gauntlet. Think escalating, relentless waves of enemies with boss-like spikes designed to test your build choices, your reaction timing, and whether you've learned to string attacks together without panicking. Reports from players who got early hands-on make it clear this mode is meant to be a proper challenge. 100 waves, varied enemy compositions, and progression rewards that encourage replaying the mode to unlock cosmetics and other goodies. It's not just a tacked-on arena. It's intentionally structured so players will experiment with weapons, powers, and different tactics across long sessions. That kind of longevity is exactly the sort of anchor a game like this needs, especially after a launch that left some players wishing for more endgame. Now, that doesn't exist in isolation. The update pairs the new mode with a list of combat and control improvements that, on paper, address the loudest player complaints from the opening months. The devs focused heavily on responsiveness. Dodge frames feel tighter, jump input and double jump timing have been tuned, and combo windows have been smoothed, so chaining feels less like fighting the controls and more like fighting the enemies. There are also specific weapon feedback tweaks. The Scythe and Greatsword got attention, so their hit feel and impact read better, which matters when every split-second decision can mean surviving a wave or getting overwhelmed. When a gauntlet mode expects you to perform at a high level, those little hits to responsiveness and feedback shift from nice to have to must have. Quality of life fixes are another cornerstone of this update, and some of them are the kinds of things that change the player experience almost immediately. A prologue skip option is now included, which is huge if you want to jump straight to endgame content or rerun the game without replaying that long opening sequence. Controls are now more customizable with improved rebind options, so players who don't use a default layout can set up their preferred scheme. Cutscene presentation has been reworked in places so transitions don't feel awkward, and some long sequences have been tightened to reduce tedium. For people who felt the pacing lagged early on, these changes are the kind of friction removals that make replaying a lot more palatable. Because performance issues were one of the louder critiques, the update includes a number of technical fixes aimed at stabilizing frame rates and improving visual performance, particularly on PC but also on PS5. The patch notes call out optimization passes across certain areas, tweaks to lighting and particle load, and fixes that target crashes and specific chapter bugs that some players encountered. That doesn't guarantee a flawless experience for every configuration. Optimization is an iterative game, but it's a clear signal the team prioritized making the base gameplay more smoothly before expecting players to tackle an endurance mode like Surge of Voidrax. If the Gauntlet mode pushes the engine harder, those back-end fixes are what'll stop performance from tanking mid-run. On the content and reward side, the update ships with a handful of new cosmetics, phantom cards, and unlockables tied to Surge of Voidrax progression. These are not paywalled. The update is free, and the cosmetic rewards are gated by in-game milestones, which helps keep the motivation loop honest. You earn the new skins and extras by playing, not by paying. That approach makes sense for winning back players who felt burned at launch. Free content that directly links to a challenging new mode gives veterans a reason to return, and newcomers an appealing promise of extra toys to unlock if they stick with it. Alright, time for the patch notes paraphrase. I'm laying these out as a flowing narration because that's how it reads when you actually load the patch notes into your head. First, the core, new mode Surge of Voidrax, a 100-wave, progressively difficult challenge with arena-like encounters, boss surges, and a narrative framing that ties into the Voidrax story, where you're entering a separate pocket dimension to contain volatile Voidrax energy and end up stabilizing the collapsing barrier. The mode gives you access to all the weapons and skills you've collected, encourages experimentation by rotating enemy types and modifiers between runs, and rewards you with cosmetics and phantom card drops that are unique to the mode. Next, combat improvements. Dodge, jump, and combo execution have been tuned to feel tighter. Weapon feedback has been adjusted to make heavy hitters feel satisfyingly impactful. Various hit windows and cancel windows have been refined, so combos are less finicky. The devs also adjusted enemy telegraphs and attack timings in some waves to make certain encounters feel fairer, while still keeping the pressure on. That's important because a wave mode that's unfair doesn't retain players. A wave mode that's demanding but communicative does. Continuing into the patch details, the QOL changes include the previously mentioned prologue skip, which you can toggle if you've already played through the opening and just want to get to the meat of the adventure. cutscene tweaks that reduce unnecessary hang time and fix some camera jank in a few chapters, controller rebinding across more actions so you can map what matters to you, and small HUD adjustments that declutter some on-screen info during fights. There are also menu and UI polished items, improved navigation in the loadout screens, clearer tooltips on ability upgrades, and fixes where some cosmetic previews would display incorrectly. You'll notice these things when you navigate menus or re-equip weapons between runs. The interface simply feels more considered. On the technical front, there are a number of stability and performance fixes. The team patched several chapter-specific crashes and memory issues that could occur during long sessions, which is really important for a mode that can last an hour plus if you're pushing through dozens of waves. Visual fidelity has been cleaned up in some areas where post-processing effects were overly aggressive and causing frame dips, and there are a set of PC-specific options recommended in the patch notes for users to toggle if they want to balance visuals versus frame rate. Those options are the usual suspects: shadow quality, particle density, and motion blur toggles. But the fact they point players to specific settings indicates the devs validated a set of stable configurations during testing. It's a practical approach. Give users agency while continuing to iterate server-side and build-side on broader optimizations. There are a bunch of smaller, targeted fixes that are easy to miss in a headline recap, but collectively make a big difference. A few enemy AI behaviors were corrected so they don't get stuck during arena transitions. Weapon swap timing has been adjusted to prevent a handful of frame-perfect exploits, and some trophies or achievements that failed to register under niche conditions were fixed. Also, the update repairs some localization strings and cleans up a couple of UI clipping bugs in non-English language options. These changes feel minor until you run into them, at which point you're grateful they're no longer a thing. Now, let me get a bit meta on why this patch matters to the ecosystem around the game. When a studio ships a big free update that both expands content and aggressively addresses player feedback, there's a chance to reset the narrative. That's what's attempting to happen here. A new, demanding challenge mode to extend playtime, coupled with fixes that make the core loop feel better, means reviews and player sentiment can shift if the patch is stable. It doesn't automatically erase launch criticism, but it gives the community a tangible reason to reevaluate the title. If Surge of Voidrax is tuned well and the performance patches hold up under stress, you'll likely see a spike in streamer runs and community challenges, which in turn creates more organic visibility for the game. The update's content model, free mode plus earned cosmetics, also avoids the PR landmines of paywalled endgame. That's smart from both a retention and goodwill standpoint. Player experience-wise, what should you expect on your first runs in Surge of Voidrax? Expect to learn by failure. The waves escalate, and you'll probably wipe a lot early as you learn enemy patterns and when to conserve resources. Your loadout choices will matter. Mixing a fast, high-mobility weapon with a heavy-hitting secondary tends to be a safe generalist strategy in these modes, because the heavy tool handles big bursts, while the nimble weapon lets you weave and dodge. There are potions and progression elements mentioned in previews that add a semi-roguelite feel. You collect or unlock small upgrades between runs that help you push a little further each time. Those meta progression hooks are crucial. They make failure feel productive instead of punitive. If you watched the initial launch and felt it had promise but needed smoothing, this update reads like a focused second pass. Fix the things that block fun, add an engaging loop that rewards skill, and give players cosmetic carrots to chase. The real test will be whether the stability fixes hold up under the load of hundreds of players attempting long runs, and whether the enemy balancing in Surge of Voidrax feels challenging rather than artificially punitive. But from the content and notes released, the intention and structure are clear.